This is a story of a country that changed my life forever. We are in 2018. I've just dropped out of university in Australia and I'm working in a movie distribution company. The coolest corporate job I could find at the time, but still a corporate job. This one evening, I'm watching a movie called The Secret Life of Walter Mitty. Basically, it's the story of a guy who's living a monotonous routine and sleepwalks through his life until one day, he feels the adventure calling. That's when he decides to take control of his life and finally live it to the fullest. Later in the movie, there's this super cool scene where he's longboarding down the roads of Iceland. I felt something watching it. For me, this scene was a representation of absolute freedom. That's it. I had to go there. I had to be there. And that's how everything started. So I end my contract, book the tickets, grab my passport, and go to the airport. So here's the plan. I'm gonna cycle around Iceland's ring road for 3 weeks. But I'm not doing it alone. There's a few other guys I know that are always down for anything. This is Farhan. He's a Pakistani Norwegian who was one of my first adventure companions back in Australia and New Zealand. Then you have our favorite Frenchman, Valentin, one of my closest friends from school and one of the funniest people I know.
I love cookies.
And finally, Sander, who's Farhan's childhood friend from Norway. A reserved gentleman, but very resourceful. To be honest with you guys, I had no idea what I was getting myself into. We were underprepared and hadn't trained a single bit. But we were excited, and that's all that matters, right? So, Valentin and I fly from Paris to Keflavik Airport. We arrive there at 3 a.m., but the sky is still bright. Iceland is so far north that the sun doesn't set in the summer. It just stays very low in the horizon. It's called the midnight sun. It's a very strange thing to witness. Anyways, we had our first little problem. The airport we're in is 45 kilometers away from Reykjavik, the capital city where we were supposed to camp for the night. And there was no one around to help. We were completely screwed.
Qu'est-ce que tu penses de l'Islande, Val?
Jamais on va en Islande.
So we decide to hitchhike. The first guy that picks us up, his name is obviously Thor.
God of thunder!
Thor drives us through the lava fields and a full moon sky, then drops us off at a campsite, where our second problem is encountered. We don't have a tent. It's with Farhan and Sander that are coming the next day.
On n'a pas de tente, on a essayé de trouver un site de camping en fait. Et il y a cette barrière là, on va essayer de l'escalader en fait.
Putain, il fait froid.
So what do you do in this scenario? Pay for a hotel? Go to a hostel for the night? Nah, sleep in a concrete playground tunnel.
On va dormir ici ce soir.
Get 3 hours of sleep.
Je témoigne pas ouf.
Ouais, mais genre on t'a pas demandé, tu vois.
And finally leave right on time to avoid getting raided by a bunch of kids.
Il y a 5 minutes, on est sorti. Et là, il y a tous les enfants qui sont arrivés.
A few minutes later, we joined the others.
Stop speaking Norwegian.
Stop speaking French.
And what's happening now?
Well, we're going to Iceland. Well, we are in Iceland.
We are in Iceland.
We're gonna eat something and we're gonna buy the whole thing.
That's
the situation.
Valentin, t'as un truc à dire?
Vraiment pas.
Before getting our bikes, we have to fuel up by eating traditional, authentic Icelandic food. So we obviously go to the nearest Domino's Pizza. And by the way, during our time in Iceland, there was the FIFA World Cup that was happening. And the Iceland team was phenomenal. For a country of 300,000 inhabitants, they were the ultimate team of underdogs.
Le match de l'Islande en Islande en fait.
But today wasn't Iceland's best day. On our first day in the country, this was their last performance in the World Cup, losing against Croatia in a very tight game. But for us, it was time to get our rental bikes, load them up, and begin the grand adventure. But day one was really tough. Even in the peak of summer, Iceland's conditions are rough. Imagine having all of Mother Nature's forces teaming up against you. It's 2 degrees Celsius, it's rainy and foggy, you're constantly surrounded by a smell of rotten eggs because of the sulfur escaping from the volcanic undergrounds. Oh, and day one was 50 kilometers of uphill. Like that, for 50 kilometers. And I made the mistake to take the trailer the first day.
Il y a pas mal derrière. Voilà, super.
It's as if you're playing a video game that is designed for you to lose.
Il est 1h du matin et on vient de faire une cinquantaine de kilomètres à vélo.
We arrived at our destination at 3 a.m. completely exhausted. I thought I could take it all in, but I was completely mistaken. It broke me. And we faced reality. This is gonna be a tough 3 weeks, baby. But at least we knew what to expect, right? No. The real beast to conquer when cycling Iceland is the wind. Iceland happens to be the spot where the mild Atlantic air from the south collides and mixes with the Arctic air of the north that is super freezing cold, and it creates, ladies and gentlemen, this. And for us cyclists, it is pure pleasure. Some days we had a headwind reaching up to 90 kilometers per hour. Just picture yourself pedaling as hard as you can, but still going backwards because the wind pushes you and makes you lose balance. One day, it took us 5 hours to cycle 20 kilometers. Yeah. Our reality didn't look like this movie at all. We were later told that this summer we were cycling Iceland was the coolest summer in like decades, which kind of made sense in retrospect. I've done a lot of tough stuff in my life, but I think for the first time, I really understood the importance of shelter and food. All I could think about was two things: being in between four walls and having a sandwich. No wind, no cold, no noise. Just eating a simple sandwich indoors. But here I am, for kilometers and kilometers, tired, cold, wet, sore, hungry, and in pain. You know, you're in the journey and you start having those doubts and regrets. Why did I even choose to put myself in this situation, right? But our doubts and worries quickly disappeared with some of the most beautiful landscapes I had ever seen in my life. It was so majestic that we didn't even pay attention to our pain and discomfort anymore. Every few kilometers, there was a new waterfall prettier than the previous one. This was the best way to enjoy a great view, by earning it through tough physical effort. The crazy thing about Iceland isn't just its waterfalls. As we kept moving forward, the landscapes changed drastically. We called it the law of the 5 kilometers. Every 5 kilometers, the landscape was completely different. You're cycling next to the biggest glacier in Europe. 5 kilometers further, you have the greenest hills you see. 5 kilometers further, you have an Arctic canyon. 5 kilometers further, you see endless fields of purple flowers. 5 kilometers further, black sand and blue rivers slithering through it. And another 5 kilometers further, you're next to a lagoon full of ice chunks that reach the nearby sea, where the waves push back some of them on the black sand beach. Just thinking about it now, probably the best landscapes I've ever seen, honestly. It was unbelievable. We felt like in a completely different planet. Iceland. A few nights later, we arrived in a little town called Vik, with a beautiful campsite on the side of the Green Hills. Valentin and I decided to skip the sleep and wandered through the highlands all night long. The wind numbed all our senses. We were floating. We entered a total trance. We felt invincible. We then arrived on the black sand beach. Just picture a purple sky at 3 a.m. No one in sight. You have a sea cave, monstrous rock formations. Everything is dark and foggy. The wind is immersive. The black sand spreading as far as the eye can see, and the waves rolling. We felt like in a dream. We felt one with the earth. You need to live it to understand it. I wish I could put it into words and images, but it's not even enough to show how incredible this experience was. Witnessing nature at its absolute rawest empowered us so much. Even if the next day we hadn't slept and were exhausted. Better days were coming up. In the second week, as we were cycling from Hofen to Akureyri, a combination of 3 elements gave us really good momentum: tailwind, sun, and flat surfaces. Doubled our daily distance, camped anywhere, and filled water everywhere, as Iceland has some of the cleanest and most accessible water in the world, so we drank from the countless rivers and streams. None of the days went according to our initial rough plan, and it was perfectly fine with us. We had to learn how to take things the way they came, with the ups and the downs. And when you're open to anything, anything can happen, right? So there was this one night that was very special to me. I met 3 strangers: Josh, Adar, and Michael. Michael was Palestinian, Adar was Israeli, and Josh was American. It was incredible as a Lebanese to meet those guys. And actually Josh impacted my life so much because now he's working in Hollywood. He's a scouter for locations. He's the guy who pushed me to go to LA the next summer, and this next summer changed my life completely. I might make a video on it in the future. I'm still in touch with them to this day. And I met so many other people along the way also that made the journey so much more rich and interesting. Like for example, Alexi, who's a French hitchhiker, or Willem, who's a Dutch cyclist, and they actually ended up traveling with us for the next few days. It was just so refreshing to share memories with like-minded people. But even if those memories were incredible, our problems didn't go away. At this point, we had been cycling for 2 weeks. The weather kept changing every hour, and we had more and more flat tires, so we had to patch the tubes in the cold.
C'est la deuxième roue qui est partie aujourd'hui. Monsieur l'a trouvé.
We were also on a tight budget, and Iceland being the second most expensive country in the world didn't help things a lot. So our diet basically consisted of the cheapest available things: wet bread, peanut butter, and bananas. Oh boy, bananas saved us.
Banana. Banana.
Banana! Banana!
Banana!
Bananas weren't only cheap, but they were perfect for us for cycling. They give us an amazing amount of energy. And even though Iceland has probably the worst climate possible to be growing bananas in, it actually has some of the largest plantations in Europe because of its greenhouses that are fueled by geothermal energy. Fun fact, Iceland runs almost completely on renewables. Oh, and also, Iceland ranks first in the Global Peace Index, which means that we could leave our stuff anywhere unattended and nothing would happen. So yeah, despite everything, Iceland has its advantages. In the third week of our adventure, Valentin went back to Reykjavik, and Willem and Alexi left a few days later. It was just Farhan, Sander, and I that were left. The rest of the trip was going to be intense, but we had to finish it. We understood what to expect, which is to not expect anything at all. After passing through the beautiful East Fjords and Akureyri, Iceland's second biggest city, we cycled through the north and the west, which are wilder and less touristy than the rest of the country.
Greetings from the north.
And almost every day we would try to reach the next village on time to be able to watch every football game possible. Cause yeah, the World Cup was getting heated. And I was supporting France, and they were really advancing pretty confidently towards the final. But there's one little adventure that clearly stood out on our way back to Reykjavik. Let's call it the best pee of my life. So we're on top of this volcano in the north of the country, okay? The wind that day is just outrageous. Wind this strong should be illegal. And what do you do when you're on a volcano in the middle of nowhere in northern Iceland? You take a pee. I'm on the edge of the volcano, and Farhan and Sander are right behind me. I start peeing, and my pee, it goes straight, like that, horizontal, for 20 meters. We laughed even more. It was the best pee of my life. Wow, I'm so honored to be able to share this story on YouTube right now. A few days later, we finally came back to civilization in Reykjavik. We had cycled around a whole country. It was surreal. I felt so proud of myself. But the adventure wasn't over yet. To go back home, I had a transit in Paris. During my flight, France was playing against Croatia in the World Cup final.
Final of the 21st Football World Cup. Mbappe! Oh my word!
In the same hour I landed, France won.
France are the champions of the world. It will be some can-can on the Champs-Élysées tonight.
It was so magical. I was on the streets, soaking in the once-in-a-lifetime moment. There's a quote that says, "Success is a combination of ignorance and enthusiasm." Cycling around Iceland was a great example of that. It started with a childish desire after watching a movie and ended up being one of the toughest experiences of my life, but also one of the best, because there was growth, because there were lessons behind the hardships, because embracing the ups and downs that made up the adventure was incredibly fulfilling. Having enthusiasm and a positive mindset when faced with a challenge like this is how we create some of the best memories of our adult years in one of the harshest and yet most beautiful countries in the world. Thank you so much for watching this video. I really appreciate it. It was really a life-changing adventure. I really wanted to communicate it and make a video about it. It's been a long time. It's been 4 years, 5 years soon. Fun fact, I haven't cut my hair since I was in Iceland. And it got pretty long actually, but it's gonna change soon, because I'm about to embark very, very soon on a trip that is 12 times longer. And honestly, I'm terrified, but I'm also very excited. So if you've made it until here in this video, there's one thing left to do. Please subscribe. I would really appreciate it. And I'll see you very, very soon.
I should have done a vlog. Bro, why didn't we do a vlog?